Police officers and first responders wear badges to let their communities know they are here to protect and serve. But it comes at a price. Samantha Horwitz and John Salerno work with police departments across the country to bring valuable recovery, insight resources, and workshops. A Badge of Honor TV brings those professionals to you so we can come together and revitalize communities through a better understanding of what's at stake and what's required for repair. So take a load off and turn up your TV. It's about to get real.
Hey, welcome to A Badge of Honor TV. We are powered by the OBBM network, and you're listening to John and Sam on this Mental Health Monday. Before we begin anything, Sam, freedom of speech is the most powerful thing we have in our Constitution. And this week we lost a dear proponent of freedom of speech, Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated in Utah. And today we want to dedicate and honor him with our show. Because if not for speakers like Charlie Kirk, we wouldn't be able to do this. We wouldn't be able to share the information that we have. We wouldn't be able to speak freely. And it is such a nation mourns for such an amazing man who tried to bring unity and honest debate between people. It is so sad. So today's show is dedicated to him.
Absolutely, John. Couldn't have said it any better. It is, I don't know about you, but I feel like I've been on a roller coaster ride, and I want to get off this one.
Yeah.
Between Charlie Kirk's being assassinated and right on the heels of 9/11, going to the memorial services, you and I spoke before. It was like everybody was in this heightened state, like all that hypervigilance came back again, and the distraction of, hey, are things going to happen at the different memorial services across the country? It was a real concern.
Thank God, really nothing happened. I went to 3 memorials this week between Dallas that me and you went to.
Mm-hmm.
I attended one in Grapevine, which was for the for the pilots and the flight attendants and the passengers. It was right here in Grapevine, which was a beautiful ceremony that they held. And then I just finished up the Fort Worth stair climb this past Saturday. All events were, when you talk about inspirational, you see these young firefighters who are probably still in diapers or weren't even born yet.
Or not born, right.
We're not even born yet. Caring for our fallen brothers and saying their names and really taking pride in what they do. It really rejuvenates your whole soul to see these young men and women climbing. And it's a blessing to see that they keeping their promise and never forgetting, even though they were still toddlers.
Yeah, it was very heartwarming. And, tonight is a show that it's going to open a lot of people's eyes. It certainly opened when we met these guys. It opened our eyes. John and I were both at 9/11. I was in Tower 1 when American Airlines Flight 11 struck it. John, you were there at 5:30 p.m. right after Building 7 came down, which is the building in which I worked, where the U.S. Secret Service New York field office was housed, and some other interesting agencies. We can talk about that with our guests tonight. But 24 years has gone by. You and I have talked before that the 9/11 Commission, the official, I'll just call it like it is, was a load of crap. I think I threw that book across the room more than any other book in my life because I knew I was reading lies.
Yeah.
We deserve the truth. We started this show dedicating it to Charlie Kirk, who spoke the truth. We need to do the same thing for 9/11. And I think that if you're paying close attention, you know that we're being sold a really rank and stinky bill of goods. the misinformation campaigns, the narratives being pushed out. I think and I'll speak for myself, is it takes me back to 9/11 and listening to the newscasters, the same thing over and over. They're all saying the same thing. And here we are with Charlie Kirk, the same thing. Again, we know when we're being lied to. And after I saw Kurt Weldon on one of the Tucker episodes, I knew I had to do a deep dive. A friend gave me a link that said, Sam, I didn't know when the right time for you to look at this is, but I'm sending it to you anyway. Immediately got connected to our guests. And without further ado, we're talking about demanding a new investigation into 9/11 so that we can put closure on that day, so that our brothers and sisters did not die in vain, so their family members know exactly what happened. So without further ado, we've got Firefighters for 9/11 Truth founder Erik, lawyer, and Captain Raul Angulo. Thank you guys so much for joining us on A Badge of Honor TV.
Welcome.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, thank you, Sam, and thank you, John.
You bet. It is an honor to have you here. And like I said, people just, well, my dogs agree. You can hear them. Sorry about that. People just need to kind of sit down and take all this in. Because if you bought into the narrative, like we all did after 9/11, be prepared to have some new information brought forward, and it should make you look deeper however you want to do that. So Erik, let's start with you. Then I'm going to go on mute. Sorry about my dogs. We'll start with you. Tell everybody watching and listening on your favorite podcast app a little bit about you and your background.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, I spent 25 years in fire and emergency services as both a paramedic, firefighter, paramedic, and as a firefighter. My last 16 years were with Seattle. I was on a FEMA team when 9/11 happened, expecting to be called up. Seattle had two FEMA teams. One was a USAR, which is Urban Search and Rescue. Another one was a Metropolitan Medical Strike Team. Because there were so few survivors, they didn't send us as the MMST team. So me and several other firefighters went out on our own dime, and we supported however we could. And I aggressively defended the official story for years. Anybody who questioned it, I would shut them down as fast as I could. Didn't realize how scared I was to consider the alternative. And then one day in beginning of 2008, and within a 24-hour window, I had just a jarring awakening, and I was able to see it. The things I couldn't see, it all came through. And because it wasn't shoved down my throat, it came through a different door, you could say. And then I knew I had to found Firefighters for 9/11 Truth, and that was in 2008. And ever since then, it's just been an experience and learning more and more about how the control systems work. So thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Erik, let me ask you a quick question before we move over to Raul. What was your pivotal point? Because everybody has that pivotal point where it says that aha moment where you made the switch from going, well, they're telling me the truth, to holy crap, this is an outright lie.
Yeah, what I would say is I had my defense systems up, like defenses up.
Like we all did.
I wouldn't let anything in. But a dear friend of mine that was a West Point graduate, he was a captain in the Army, and he was at that time a vice president of a major bank in Seattle. He came over to my house just to hang out, and I could tell he was upset. And I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "If I didn't know better, I would swear there are people trying to destroy our economy. I'm being ordered to do things in the bank that will destroy the bank." He said an Econ 101 student wouldn't do it, was his line. And that got my attention. So that night I was like, what? I asked for more details. He gave them to me. And that night I started doing my own research on who controls the economy. And the documentaries I watched kept pointing back to 9/11. And because no one was shoving it down my throat, I saw Tower 7 collapsing. I'd seen it on the TV that day one, but hadn't seen it since really. And once I saw it again, that's what woke me up. I'm like, that's controlled demolition. Yeah. And I knew it on day one, but I shut myself down because the story changed. You know, yeah. So it was just that one moment. I'm like, oh my God.
Yep.
So,
yeah, it took a lot. I totally understand that cognitive dissonance, and my dogs are still sorry. So, Raul, let's throw it to you. Please tell everybody watching and listening on their favorite podcast app a little bit about you and your background. Then we'll take a break and jump into exactly what Erik's talking about.
Well, I am a 38-year veteran, and I did 36 years with Seattle. I retired as the senior captain, and I worked with Erik during this time. He wasn't on my crew, but I worked with him numerous times. I have written a lot of articles, magazine articles, for all the fire service publications, but primarily with fire engineering and fireengineering.com. I've lost count, but I'm somewhere around 400 published articles in various publications. But after September 11th, and a lot of my peers in the fire engineering group are FDNY guys. So my contemporaries were there, and I lost personal friends there at Ground Zero. And I was very close to one of the deputy chiefs there. And so I had, blow by blow experience hearing it directly from them. So that was good. And I had access. But at the same time, I didn't need to listen to alternative theories because I didn't have to. I'm hearing from people who were there. So in that aspect, it shielded me from other perspectives. And it wasn't until 20 years later that it finally started happening. And towards the end of my career, I got asked to write a textbook on engine company fireground operations. Now, this is an NFPA book published by Jones and Bartlett Learning, and it got published in 2021. In the third edition, there was no high-rise chapter. So for the fourth edition, I did an extensive research, reading everything I could, including the FDNY textbooks on high-rise firefighting, and put a very comprehensive chapter in there. Well, once the book gets published, it's going to go to fire departments. It's a national textbook, but it also went to other people. And when I started getting contacted from the people who are the truthers or conspiracy theorists, I was warned to stay away from them. They're a bunch of wackadoodles. You're going to hurt your career, your reputation. You work too hard to accomplish all the things you did, and this could torpedo it. And I heeded those, but at the same time, these people were asking really good questions. They were articulate, intelligent. They were coming from structural engineers and scientists and physics teachers and stuff. And so I didn't feel like they were asking crazy questions, but here's the three questions that they asked me. The first one was, had I read the NIST report on Tower 1 and 2? My answer was no. Did I know that there was a NIST report on Building 7? I knew Building 7 had collapsed, but like Erik, I saw it that one day and didn't pay much attention because it wasn't hit by a plane and we didn't lose any firefighters in there. So all the attention, the emotional attention, was still on the pile of trapped firefighters and civilians on 1 and 2. So I knew about 7, but I didn't know there was a NIST report on 7. So answer, no. Well, did you know that there was a comparative study done by the University of Alaska Fairbanks that compared the inputs from NIST and their computer modeling came up with a totally different theory on how the buildings collapsed? No. Well, why didn't you use Building 7 as a case study in your book? Good question. And I was, and then the one that really hit me was, well, are you aware that there's never been a type 1 steel construction? Type 1 is what we call the high-rise buildings. There's 5. Your home is a type 5 building made out of wood. That's the lowest level, and type 1 is the strongest building, and those are the steel high-rises in major cities. There's never been a high-rise building ever under type 1 per our fire code. There's been other hybrids and concrete buildings around the world that have collapsed, but our type 1 buildings, there's never been a collapse due to fire except Building 7. And I didn't know that. So being an author of a textbook, these were all really relevant questions that I needed to do my homework on, because I was really establishing and defending my work. I wanted it to be accurate. Firefighter lives depend on textbooks to be accurate, because you're telling them this is what we need to do to save lives and save your lives. So I felt a tremendous amount of responsibility to have life-saving, accurate information. And we get a lot of that information from NFPA, USFA, U.S. Fire Administration. NFPA is the National Fire Protection Association, so we'll be saying NFPA throughout. U.S. Fire Administration, National Fire Academy, NIOSH, UL. We're gathering this information from scientists, compiling it and putting forward as in textbooks. In a magazine, you can be opinionated. That's your opinion. But when you're doing a textbook, you got to be spot on. And when I finally read those reports and studied them, which a lot of firefighters had not, they hadn't read the NIST reports, and very few know about the University of Alaska Fairbanks report by Professor J. Leroy Hulsey. And so when I did that, I finally came to the conclusion. And Erik had told me about this years before, and I wrote him off as a wackadoodle. I told him he was crazy, and I separated myself from Erik because I didn't want to be associated with a guy who was being so disruptive. And so we weren't enemies, but I kept my distance from Erik until I finally did my own research. But what woke me up was the COVID lockdown and how that 2 weeks to flatten the curve turned into 2 years. And I contacted Erik to apologize to him because everything he had said to me over the years, he was spot on, correct. And I came to the epiphany and had to be intellectually honest. And so 24 years later, here I am.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sam, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I was muting my dogs. We got to take a quick break, and we're going to do a deep dive, a deeper dive when we come back. So I'm just going to put this slide up here. So, we're all about freedom and values, and, you get to do you when it comes to a badge of honor. But now more than ever, it's important to support companies and organizations that share our values because our votes simply aren't enough. Patriot Mobile not only shares our beliefs, but does something about it. They're America's only Christian conservative wireless carrier, and they donate a portion of every dollar that they make to organizations that fight for causes that you care about, just like right here at a badge of honor. Switch to Patriot Mobile now and get a free month, which means you get to try them out with offer code BADGE. So go to patriotmobile.com/badge. Again, the promo code is BADGE. Get a free month of service. You're not dropping the major 3 carriers in terms of where you draw your, I'll call it signal strength from, but every dollar that you pay those companies, they get to do whatever they want to do with it. At Patriot Mobile, they pour it back into communities, support first responders and veterans, and everything just like our show here. So again, 972 Patriot, promo code BADGE, or patriotmobile.com/badge. Now back to the show. Get this off here. And, we are talking a lot about kind of technical stuff. And I think we all come from, because of our backgrounds, that big thing called evidence, right? Now, we know from not only pre-COVID, post-COVID, Charlie Kirk, they're going to push a narrative. And by they, we mean the United States government. I was a United States Secret Service agent tasked to protect these folks. Okay. Good, bad, and ugly, saw it all. Some details were great, some not so great. But the whole point is they're with things like this, everybody needs to take a deep breath. And what I ask people to do is look down the road. Look 100 steps down the road. What was the thing that the Bush administration was trying to keep under wraps about the way that they needed to collect intel about the so-called terrorist incident? It was a Patriot Act, right? Well, we didn't start hearing about the Patriot Act till, the proverbial dust settled, right? And the Patriot Act was supposed to be to prevent terrorist attacks like this, right? We don't want another 9/11 to happen. What do we all know about the Patriot Act? It had nothing to do with monitoring what was going on overseas. It was everything about monitoring us. And we saw a fast forward during the pandemic where we had a show canceled. We were getting tamped down on different social medias. Nobody could speak freely, right? So here we go. 24 years later, we got Senator Johnson, who is trying to champion a number of causes. He wants to open a new investigation. We've got Kurt Weldon, who was on Tucker, who really, I mean, talk about a passionate guy. If you didn't see that episode, he blew the lid off of 9/11 and made me go, yeah, I think this person who swore an oath to the Constitution and to protect the people that created this whole mess, I think I need to take a further step back and really examine. And when Raul, you mentioned the NIST report, and Erik, you mentioned you and I were the same, and John, I'll group you in, is where we bought into the narrative because our brothers and sisters died. So it had to be this overseas thing. They attacked us, and we're not going to accept anything else. 1 and 2 is hard. It's still hard to watch. We're all about evidence. So please enlighten everybody watching and listening. What evidence has come out, not only about 1 and 2, and maybe some explosive material that has been found in that fine dust that made me cough for over a year and still gets me on bad air quality days. Again, 24 years later, still have health effects. And then let's also talk about 7, because people are like, what do you mean 7 collapsed? Like, they have there's people that literally have no idea. So whoever wants to start.
Well, I'll start with kind of what I looked at first, because I wanted to see, it was 2008. There was already quite a bit of evidence of what was happening and that type of thing. When I look at it, the whole complex was a crime scene. The Pentagon, World Trade Center complex, and Shanksville. So it's all one. So if you find explosives or explosive dust at any one of them, it's at all of them, meaning we need to look at all of them. So I wanted to see, what is a standard investigation? What would that be? And so I went to our own fire investigation unit in Seattle Fire, and then some of the top investigators helped me there, and they showed me the NFPA 921, which is the guide for fire and explosions. And when I looked at that, I went through page by page, word for word, and I found that they ignored almost everything that was basic. So within days, they were removing evidence and destroying it. I thought they were just taking it off, like an airplane crash. They'll take it to a warehouse, put it in pieces, tag everything, try to recreate it. And that's what I expected. That's what I thought was being done, but it wasn't. They were taking it to a landfill, they were destroying it, and then they were taking the steel and recycling it. And so that really shocked me. So that's a federal crime. It's a felony. It's destruction of evidence. I've never even heard of anything like that on something like this. And for the first time, you've got a 47-story, first time ever, high-rise collapsing. And we destroy all the evidence. Like, we'll never learn as firefighters how that happened. We can't make code changes, strategy and tactics changes. So that was shocking. And then what I saw was NIST, when they brought out their report in 2000, I think it was 2008 also, when they brought that out, they said there were no witnesses to explosions. There were no audio recordings. There was no nothing. That was a complete lie. There's 156 first responders on recorded testimony or sworn testimony that heard explosions, that document it, and things like that. We've got audio recordings, we've got video recordings. So if you take a routine house fire that we go to, we don't go to the house fire and try to find excuses not to test for something. We're going to test for accelerants, a gasoline or whatever could have whatever could have contributed to this. We're just going to do it. It's easy to test. So why, when all these witnesses heard explosions, all these things happen, it's a perfectly symmetrical collapse on Tower 7. Why did they refuse to this day to test for explosives? It's insane. So to me, that's a clear sign of a cover-up. And, and then there's been private investigators, scientists that did take dust samples, I believe it was from 8 different sites. And they did find microspheres. They found nanothermite, military grade nanothermite. So it's documented. There's no denying it. And just looking at the way the investigation was done, it's a cover up. So I'll hand it over to Raul because he's really done a lot more research in the last few years on more 1 and 2 and more the fire side of it. But that's what really got my attention. It made me go, I've got to go all in because there's no way, like it's a lie and it's clearly a lie. So once I did, yeah,
Erik,
yeah,
getting onto the steel, and I don't remember if it was your video or I forgot where I just saw this. They were talking about the molten steel and the way it was melted, and the thermite brings up a good thing because they had explosive and demolition experts talking about how they wrap the steel girder with the thermite, and it goes on a diagonal. Just to correct me if I'm wrong, because I caught a glimpse of it today. It goes on a diagonal. Now, some of those steel beams in photographs and in video show that those beams were severed, just like the demolition expert said how he wraps that.
Molten, it's melted.
Am I speaking out of line? Because you guys did more of the research than I did. I'm just trying to confirm that.
Yeah, I can speak to that. That is one of the ways they do it. So they do at the angle. But now here's where it gets the nuances. We can't say for sure that was done by thermite charges there because it was after the fact. And one of the debunking things is they use torches to cut it and get it clean. Could have happened. There's no chain of custody there. But the thing is, that's still, you don't need that because there's so much evidence that explosives were used just by the way it came down. This should have been tested. So you're right with that. Now the molten steel, steel doesn't even begin softening till about just over 1,000 degrees. These were office fires in Tower 7. So they don't reach the temperatures to melt steel. Steel melts, about 2,500 degrees is when it starts melting. Typical fires, especially Tower 7, never gets anywhere close to that.
Room and content. That's it. A room and content fire.
Exactly.
Well, not even jet fuel gets that hot.
Jet fuel doesn't either. And now nanothermite, what it gets to, or thermite, gets to about 4,000 to 5,000 degrees. So plenty hot enough to create the molten steel. So that alone. And what's interesting is in NFPA 921, it talks about thermite. It says if you have molten steel or molten concrete even, which we had both, you need to test for thermite. So it's just so basic. And, it's NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, yet they didn't follow the most basic national standards. That's just hypocrisy beyond hypocrisy.
Yeah. So, and their report was a sham. And
you
look side by side. Another point for me was you watched the video, everybody watches 7 come down, and then NIST puts up what they said happened, and it's like, my eyes are working. That's not the same. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be a physicist. All you need are eyes to see it doesn't jive. So let's take another quick break, and then Raul, we will come back with you to unpackage more of what Erik introduced. Stay tuned, everybody. We will be right back.
Look, when you need to respond to an aggressive situation to protect yourself, your family, or your property, understanding your firearm and legal position are critical. Officers know your skills are only as good as your commitment to training. So know what you're doing. So when you're in a vulnerable situation, we can count on your response. Whether you're a beginner or a licensed gun carrier, Carry in Texas offers basic firearms training, Texas permitless carry courses, license to carry, and basic 2A courses so you can understand the responsibilities, situational awareness, and learn the technical skill required when you carry your firearm. Go to carryintexas.com to find the right course for you. Join me, former United States Secret Service agent Samantha Horwitz, on the range for beginner basics, LTC prep, and range practice. Go to carryintexas.com today. That's carryintexas.com.
Hey, welcome back to A Badge of Honor TV with John and Sam, with our guest, Captain Raul Angulo.
Angulo.
Captain Raul Angulo and Erik Lawyer, firefighter Erik Lawyer, both of former Seattle firefighters and a captain. Welcome back, guys. Before we left, we were talking about different explosives, different thermites, different theories, different conspiracies, and finding out the truth on what really happened on 9/11. And when we're taking a deep dive into, the TV shows us one thing, but going behind the curtain, there's all this other stuff going on. Hey, you guys look over here while we do all this stuff over here. And that's what our government does to us all the time. They set off one thing, this way they can play another role somewhere else. And us laymen aren't any of the wiser. So you two are seeking out the truth. You guys have done a deep search, lots of years in investigation between both of you guys. And we're going to find out a little bit more. So I think with Raul, we're going to talk about the towers now with the fire from the steel, right?
Right. Let me make a couple of points. The first thing I want to say is, why Seattle guys? Where's the New York guys? Yeah. Well, we get asked that. And
guys.
What's that?
I said there are New York guys too. Yeah.
Right, but they're not at the tip of the spear, because the emotional impact on the FDNY. We can't even fathom what they went through in that loss. And a lot of them are afraid. They don't want to be to be a conspiracy theorist or a wacko or falling with our group and lose that camaraderie. That's all part of their identity and support group. So there's a lot of people that may agree with us in the FDNY, but they're not at the tip of the spear because it's just too painful. So people need to understand that it's going to take firefighters from outside to ask some of these really hard questions. And now after 24 years, a lot of the emotion has died down so that we can ask the questions without emotion. Keep in mind that during that whole time, there's so much emotion involved that we're not paying attention to our surroundings from a forensic point of view, at least within the fire department, because this whole thing just devastated us like we've never seen. So that's why Seattle and not New York are at the tip of the spear. Mm-hmm. So I just want to say that. Let me just mention something about the 9/21, because this is really important. In 93, we had the bombing at the World Trade Center. And I don't know if you were working there, Samantha, but they call it the 93 bombing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That right there should have been, and you're law enforcement, you guys are, that right there should have been enough.
We were doing a briefing. That's what we did a briefing on a couple of days before 9/11. That's what we were talking about.
Right, but that would have been enough information right there to test for explosives on September 11th. They already used them in 93. And if they weren't successful tipping over the towers, then, and I've heard people say this, that I can't verify it, but they say, well, we're going to try again. But certainly law enforcement would.
That was the Sheik.
What was that?
That I'm going to collaborate with that. That was the Sheik, and that was when he was taken out of Federal Plaza. He was walking, the blind Sheik. He was walking with some Fed and some law enforcement officers, and supposedly one of the officers turned around and said, "They're still standing," and he turned around and said, "For now."
Yep.
He made that accusation. He made that statement.
Why that right there would have been enough for NIST to check for explosives in Tower 1, 2, and 7, and they said in their report that there wasn't any real hard evidence for them to pursue that route. 93 by itself should have been sufficient to test for explosives. So I do want to say that. Let me go back and I'll start with 7, then I'll transition to 1. So one more thing about this book. When I was given this assignment by Jones and Bartlett Learning, they wanted me to include the NIST UL studies at the time for house fires, a lower level, and how synthetic fuels, plastics, our modern fuels affect fire behavior in homes. And so that was my marching orders for this particular book, to include the studies that NIST did in conjunction with UL, Underwriters Laboratories. I trusted these people. I mean, my book is based on the results of the UL NIST reports. I use it in all my defenses, in my strategies, in just talking about thermodynamics. Well, NIST says, well, according to NIST. So I was like a NIST fan. I had no reason to mistrust them. But again, I had to be intellectually honest with Erik and the other people that were bringing the attention of 7, and all that information was going against NIST. So it was like I was caught between a rock and a hard spot. But that being said, you got to be intellectually honest. So here's the things about 7. When I saw those, and we heard the explosions, this is really key. If you think about the firefighters in New York that were there and responded there that day, they're not watching TV. They're there.
Right.
All right. So all the reports during that day, and there's a montage in a lot of our videos, are talking about people, reporters, everybody's talking about explosions, and building 7 going down. All that was on day 1. On day 2, the narrative was changed.
Yep.
Yep. You didn't see it. So anybody who was there on September 11th, by the time they finally got home, which for some firefighters was days, they're not hearing what the rest of the country heard on September 11th. And that's one reason why the explosive angle is so difficult for them. They never heard it, and it's really difficult to find, right? So when I did my report on 7, and I saw the buildings come down over and over and over, and you watch the sides of the building coming down in almost free fall for like 120 feet, 8 stories, because then you lose the video. That looks like controlled demolition. That's what we see. That's what we know. In our gut, we know. But NIST is saying, no, it was because of office fires. And not only that, an office fire involving one column on floor 12 caused this entire thing to come down.
Uniformly.
Yes, symmetrically, in free fall in its own footprint. And that's crazy. Now, the information that the University of Alaska Fairbanks report did, when they compiled their computer modeling, because NIST did computer modeling and so did University of Alaska. There's no building to examine. These are all theories. And so it's like using a Mac computer versus just a regular Windows computer. But they both do the same thing. You're both going to, they both accomplish, you could both write a Word document or a PowerPoint on either computer, right? So that's what you're dealing against. But every time they put the NIST inputs that they were allowed to have, the building kept tipping over.
Right.
And not only that, it's a trapezoid building. It's not a rectangle. So the trapezoid, which is still a 4-sided building, the trapezoid has a smaller front, and that's the south side facing Tower 1. So now, when Tower 1 falls, it does damage to the small part of the trapezoid. Let's call that the A side of the building. A, B, C, D going clockwise, which is how we do it. The A side, small part, is damaged. It's got gashes, tremendous amount of damage. The C side, rear, which is the north side, that's pretty much intact. And so if you have a chunk cut out of the C, exactly,
Right.
it's going to tip. It would have tipped towards Tower 1, and it doesn't. It goes straight down without any structural resistance of the columns. And to tell me that the fire caused one column to collapse and all the other unaffected columns provide no resistance, it defies the laws of gravity and structural engineering on the buildings. Those are the strongest buildings we have.
And it did it 3 times.
Right.
Because it was identical collapses on 3 buildings.
So here's what University of Alaska concludes. The only way that they could get their computer modeling to collapse to match the way the video is, the video is the key. If they didn't have the video, if we didn't have the video, then
it'd be a lot tougher.
This could have wrote whatever they want, but because of the video, their conclusions don't match what we're seeing. The only way that this could have happened was for the simultaneous removal of all, I think there were 84 columns per floor, to remove them all at the same time, simultaneously on a horizontal plane. Then you can get a free fall symmetrical collapse. The NIST video, as they show it, and you look at the photos, because I wrote an article on it, it doesn't look like anything we're looking, and their video starts to tip, but that video stops after 2 seconds. They never show the computerized collapse because NIST cannot duplicate what we're seeing.
Right.
Those are really important components.
And another thing about 7 that people may not know is who the tenants were. So you had Secret Service, you had Office of Emergency Management run by Mayor Giuliani at the time. You had DOD in there and some other agencies. This was not a public building. Okay. We had to show our badge and our ID to get past the security to the elevators to our floors. Everybody had to show ID. You didn't work there, you weren't getting in. So that was something else that was looked into after there were connections made with the terrorists. And I think that not just for our audience, but for everybody watching and listening, the massive amount of destruction, the fires burning till December, okay, hot, okay, and miraculously an intact passport from the terrorist. No. Again, we work on evidence. We've all been there, done that. From a law enforcement side, no, you do not have that. The dust, the heat, the blowout from when the towers came down, papers were flying everywhere for days. It was just papers. So there's no way that passport blew out of the airplane, that blew out of a building, that blew up all these blocks, that was not burned in perfect condition, right?
All right.
So again, other things like that, just saying, we got to take one last quick break, and we're going to keep going, because folks, once your eyes are opened, your ears are hearing this, you can't close them again. And that's what we're all about. So, you know, John and I love to take breaks with our favorite Legends coffee. And East Texas Legends Coffee Company, founded by Ben and Amanda Holmes, reflects their journey from Ben's Marine Corps service and law enforcement career, overcoming PTSD to finding purpose in ranching. Relocating to an East Texas ranch, they identified a need for a local coffee brand. Now they're opening their first coffee shop in Lindale, Texas, rooted in faith, family, and community. Their mission: inspire purposeful conversations over coffee. So drink coffee, be legendary. Go to, I'm going to put up the, there we go. Here we go. Go to etxlegendscoffee.com. That's E for East, txlegendscoffee.com. Use promo code BADGE for 15% off all coffee and merchandise. They have amazing merchandise, like the mugs that we're using, the tumblers. Again, etxlegendscoffee.com, promo code BADGE, 15% off. We want to thank everybody who already made a purchase. You guys are making the difference in the lives of first responders. And again, thank you, I've got to turn it this way, ETX, East Texas Legends.
There you go.
Be legendary. All right, so
I'm looking at our time, and I want to get to a few more points and get over to Tower 1 and 2, and then let Erik bring up some other stuff. But I want to throw this information out so that we can talk about it. For me as a firefighter, and the reason this is so important is because the textbooks are starting to change the way we do business, all based on a faulty NIST conclusion. And there's no reason to do that, because that should affect our strategy and tactics and how we save people in high-rise buildings. And so they're going off of the NIST conclusions, and there's no reason to do that, because our current textbooks as written are good. Our strategy and tactics have been solid, and all of a sudden they're talking about these anomalies to change that narrative. And that's why I'm being really aggressive with bringing this information forward. But the only way firefighters are going to listen is to listen to the science and the physics. So with that, let me just do a few more things, and then I'm going to turn it over to Erik. So in Building 7, NIST report says that the office fuel loads, that's everything in an office that can burn, the fires didn't last for 20 to 30 minutes in any given area, because the fire burns down. And we all know that. Just put a log in the fireplace, it'll burn, and then it'll go out. So Building 7 didn't collapse until 5:20 p.m. That's like 6 hours later. So the high-rise building should have been able to contain the fires that were there. And when you look at the photographs that were taken at the 3:30 hour in the afternoon, again, remember the fires started because of the collapse of Tower 1. And so it's 3:30. The fires are not raging. They're pretty much burned down. And to think that they're still generating that amount of heat to fatigue the steel and have it yield to collapse at 520 just doesn't physically make sense with the science. So that's really important to understand. Let me transition over to Tower 1 and 2 and throw a few more facts out. So now we've all seen the collapse of Tower 1 and 2. But if you notice, let's just break the towers up into thirds, because they actually are broken up into thirds. Tower 1 was hit first, and it was hit higher than Tower 2. So that one we can break up into quarters, top quarter, 2, 3, 4, right? On September 10th, the bottom 3 quarters of that building supported the entire building. And all of a sudden, on September 11th, the top of the building, this is the building with the tower, the big antenna, gets hit. And it's the top 1 quarter of the building. And it burns for, I forget however long. But when that starts to collapse, pay attention, because it's coming down and it's disintegrating. The top of the building is starting to disintegrate before, let's just call it, the destructive line starts to push down, right? The bottom of the collapse zone. We'll use that line. The top of the building is already starting to disintegrate, and then it just goes all the way down. First thing that firefighters need, it just falls. First things that firefighters need to know is that the NIST report on Tower 1 and 2 never talk about the collapse. They end all their analysis with, and then global, which is like complete, then global collapse began. Well, that's where everything starts for us to ask questions, but NIST never addresses that. They do not address it in any of their report. They talk about all the plane, it damaged this, that, fires, temperatures, whatever. I'll give them all that. But when it came time to collapse, the report stops at saying, and then global collapse began. And they don't talk about anything else from there until it's over. They don't talk about it. Firefighters don't know that. Yes.
Did they ever talk about, because when you talk about the heat and temperature on a normal room and content fire, maybe 800, 900 degrees, right? We had video of people at the windows, on those floors, on those burn floors. If they say those towers were burning at over 2,000 degrees or 1,500 degrees, those people would not be able to sustain that heat on those windows.
That is one of the subject matters of my last article, which I'm really going to hit hard. But let's just use Battalion Chief Oriole Palmer for that same example. Right. He goes to Tower 2. They send Chief Oriole up. He's really strong. He takes the elevator and hikes all the way up. And he's giving reports as he goes up. He's not on air. He's not talking through his mask. You know, when you're talking through a mask, you're talking like that. We can hear him clearly. He's breathing ambient air. He makes it to the floor of impact. And there's nothing combustible in the stairwells. He says we have 2 small pockets of fire. We can put them out. He has to see those on the floor. He has to cross the threshold of the stairwell to be able to see those pockets of fire. Send me 2 companies. We can take that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when he makes those reports, he's also talking on ambient air. And then shortly after, collapse ensues. Well, he would not be able to be standing in that environment because the heat, according to how steel fails, should be like anywhere from 1,800 to 2,800 degrees. Right. Our gear is only rated for 500 degrees, exposure at for like 17 seconds. So that is a key point. How was Oriole Palmer be able to sustain him? How could he exist in that environment if he's in an environment right prior to collapse? Now, steel heats up, yes, and if you get it that hot, it'll sag and collapse. But as the temperatures drop, even though the steel warps, it starts to reharden again. That's how you make swords, and you bend anything with steel. It's hot, and then you cool it and it regains its strength. So as the temperatures drop, the steel is not getting weaker. But for a human or any other person who was there waving at the window, especially that one woman, I forget her name, but she's actually at the impact hole. She's waving. How could you be there with that type of temperature that's destroying the rest of the floor? So that is a very good scientific point. Go ahead. We're
getting a little short on time, and I want to tell people, John and I want to point people in your guys' directions. Erik, where can people get more information? Where can they connect with you guys?
They can go to 911firefighters.org and be sure to watch the documentary called Calling Out Bravo 7. Those are the two best starts. And then on our website homepage, you can sign up as a firefighter or a civilian that wants to support. And just real quick, I'll say we did meet with Senator Johnson while we were in DC this last week, and we're working with him to move to Senate hearings, but he's given us our marching orders and homework that needs to be done. So another time I can go more into that when you have time.
I think we need a part 2 on this whole episode.
Yeah.
There's a lot to cover.
We will do.
Can I have a couple more minutes? Do we have enough time or no?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have a couple more minutes for the time slot. So that's why we need a couple, maybe we'll even do something recorded and put it up. So everybody, go to 911firefighters.org. Again, start with calling out Bravo 7. Really important. Raul, and where do you play on social media?
We're not too much on social media yet. So we have an X channel, but we're putting most of our attention just into the website right now. And then we're going to be bringing on support for social media.
But you are on X because we're connected over there. And I think on Instagram as well. Raul, quick 30 seconds.
It's really important to know that most firefighters believe that Tower 1 and 2 was a pancake collapse. That's how they say it. It wasn't, not even NIST. NIST doesn't buy into that theory. So where are they getting there's no pancakes at the bottom. There's no concrete. It's just steel. And so it's important to know that NIST does not suggest that this was a pancake collapse. So that's the official narrative. It wasn't a pancake collapse. So where do we go from there? And we'll have to save that for next time.
Absolutely. And we will do this. We will get something else out. We'll continue the conversation. Again, once your eyes are open, ears are hearing, you can't close it. And we encourage everybody to go out there and do the homework. You deserve to know the truth. We deserve to know the truth. The victims' families deserve to know the truth. And, this, I hope that tonight brought some relief for people that have been saying, hey, something's not right. Like you do have people that are on your side and do believe you. Right. And then you're going to have another camp that's like, ooh, you're making me nervous. Good. Well,
good. The way we honor the firefighters is to find the truth. We got patches, stickers, everything. Remember, never forget 343. And let's never forget that they're not telling us the truth. That's what we shouldn't forget.
That's right.
And we shouldn't forget that there's 23 NYPD firefighters and 30 or police officers and 37 Port Authority officers. The 343 everybody knows, but when I ask them, well, how many police officers? They don't know that number. Or Port Authority officers, they don't know that number. It's 23 and 37.
Don't forget K9 Serious. Got to throw in the puppy.
Okay.
Absolutely. We will bring you guys back on. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We will be in touch.
Thank you for bringing us to light. All the families deserve it. Let's get to the truth.
Yeah, together. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us.
This is
I hope 2 hours with those guys. Those guys are amazing. They are really amazing.
Everybody, yes, truly. Everybody's eyes are open by tonight, and encourage you. There's so much out there, but start with calling out Bravo 7. Let that be your baseline, and then you can dive deeper into a lot of other areas. Wherever you are watching this, thank you for tuning in tonight. Please hit that like button. And for those of you on Instagram, I'm seeing that it's playing. Please follow. We got to keep up the ability to do lives. We're almost at 1,000 followers. We need to get to that 1,000. So please go to Instagram, click follow. Really appreciate it. For all the first responders out there, you've got a group of prayer warriors across the globe, really. And we want you to get home safe every night. Thank you for what you do for our communities, keeping us safe. For our veterans, thank you for fighting the good fight so that John and I can do a show like this every single week. Thank you. For our active duty personnel spread out across the globe, thank you for what you do, keeping our shores safe here at home. John, take us home.
Well, we started the show with in remembrance of Charlie Kirk, and we're going to end it the same way. on behalf of a Badge of Honor TV, John, myself, and Sam, and all our first responders who believe in the truth. God bless the families of Charlie Kirk and all his friends. And we promise we're going to keep spreading the truth for you.
100%. Till next week, everybody. Have a good night.
A Badge of Honor podcast is produced for the OBBM Network podcast and protected under copyright law. For content permissions, please submit your request to abadgeofhonor.com on the content page. For OBBM Network programming information, please call 214-714-0495 today.